Hello, 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 everybody. It is Thursday. It's virtual book club time, and I am so excited for my group expert to have a return to join, Shoshana. I'm pointing the wrong way. I got to do it this way. Oh, I still can never do it. It's always reversed. Shoshana, welcome back to helping me co-host tonight. How's everything in Texas?
Great. We don't have the storms that you had in Charleston.
Yeah, that's good. And we don't have the smoke yet, but you guys, as you come on, please make sure that you give Facebook permission to, not Facebook, but StreamYard permission to use your name so that we know who is commenting. I see right now it says Facebook user and it says hi all, which I want to say hi, but I don't know who that is. So maybe put your name, like say, hey, this is Susie, from South Carolina or whatever, if you did not grant StreamYard permission. But with no further ado, Dana Ridenour, welcome back to my virtual book club. How are you doing?
Doing great, Susie. Thank you. It's so good to see you and Shoshana again.
I know, I'm excited. So we're going to start out tonight, and I'm going to try to read. I feel like I need to get stronger readers again already, but I'm going to read Dana's bio, and then we'll jump right in with Shoshana asking the first question tonight. And you guys do want to stick around because we have a surprise guest that we will meet about 20 minutes in tonight. So everybody, Dana Ridenour is a retired FBI agent and the award-winning author of Behind the Mask, Beyond the Cabin, which we're talking about tonight, and Below the Radar. Dana spent most of her FBI career as an undercover operative, infiltrating criminal organizations, including the Animal Liberation Front, an organization of domestic terrorists. Her first novel, Behind the Mask, is fiction, but introduces Lexi Montgomery, a character based on Dana's personal experiences working as an undercover agent in the world of domestic terrorism. In addition to winning numerous literary awards, the Kirkus Review awarded Behind the Mask the coveted Kirkus Star and named the book one of the best indie books of 2016. Beyond the Cabin followed and won the 2018 Royal Palm Literary Award. I've lost my place, you guys. Hold on. For the best thriller or suspense novel. Below the Radar, the third book in the series, was the 2020 Reader's Favorite Gold Medal winner in the fiction thriller terrorist genre, as well as the 2021 Featured Quill Book Awards Gold First Place winner for the best adult fiction. Dana lives in Beaufort, South Carolina, where she's working on her fourth novel. Wow. Miss Award winner, welcome back.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. It's good to be back. I love book clubs. Book clubs, I always tell everybody book clubs is one of my favorite things to do. So it's nice to talk to readers.
Yes,
it's
and I
fun
do
and
see,
exciting.
And I do see a little bit of following from Hilton Head right now. You guys make sure to tell us where you're watching from when you come on. And Shoshana, I'm going to let you go ahead and ask the first question of our featured author tonight. Go for it.
Thank you, Susie. Dana, it's really great to see you. And it's particularly fun to see you because of having met you last year after reading your first book, Behind the Mask, and then knowing that I was going to meet you with the Low Country Literary and Leisure Getaway, thanks to Susie. I asked my book club if they would mind going ahead and reading that so that I would be prepared to meet you having read your second book, and really enjoyed Beyond the Cabin as well, with your continuing main character, Lexi Montgomery, and the theme of eco-terrorism, which is something that a lot of folks don't really know a whole lot about. But with my book club was really interested in, given that you were an FBI agent and that you were undercover as well, the undercover work that you did you have to assume the role fully as an undercover agent? And were there ever times that you had to do something that was against what you would ethically normally do?
Oh, that's a great question. Yes and yes. Well, there's actually two kinds of undercover agents within the FBI. There's what they call like short-term agents, where you're not fully immersed. You kind of go in for a quick hit. You might be someplace for a week or two, maybe a month or so. And there's the deep cover cases. The deep cover is long-term, and you are fully immersed. And that's the kind of undercover that I did, especially with the Animal Liberation Front, Earth Liberation Front people. I was fully immersed, which meant I didn't come out of my character at all. I was under 24/7. I had an alias passport, alias driver's license, credit cards. My apartment was in my alias. I didn't carry anything with my real name. I didn't carry my badge gun or any of that kind of stuff with me. I was a whole new person. And it's a difficult way to live, because you have to cut ties with all family, friends. Nobody can know where you are or what you're doing for the most part. So nobody had my cell phone number. My mom couldn't contact me. I couldn't talk to my sister, my friends. If there was a family emergency, my mom had my contact agent's number. So that's what she would do. She would have contacted him, and he would have gotten a hold of me. So that is what they call deep cover. And it was a long-term case. My first case lasted 4 years, and my second case lasted 3 years. So I spent nearly 7 years undercover, almost consecutively. There was a little break in between the two, but it was almost a consecutive 7 years of undercover work, which is probably way too much.
That's a very long time. For Lexi in Beyond the Cabin, it sounds like hers wasn't quite that long, but it sounds like it was deep undercover.
It was. I just shortened her span. I think she was under for close to a year time. The time span of the first book was about a year. And my first case was about 4 years. Because especially in a situation where you don't have introductions, you don't have somebody like an informant or something to do introductions, you have to make your own introductions, which is considered what they call a cold bump. You have to work your way into an organization without the help of anybody. And that's what I was facing out there, which was one of the reasons why it kind of took such a long time.
She, meaning Lexi, made friends, and it was slow. One of the ones that she made was Captain Meade. And, a wonderful character, but apparently he was modeled after someone in real life for you. It looked like the book was dedicated to Captain Sandy Vermont.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about him.
Captain Sandy was one of my favorite people in the world. And the character Captain Meade is by far my favorite character, because, of course, it's modeled after Captain Sandy. And I started working for Captain Sandy when I was young, like a teenager. He had a tour business out of Georgetown, South Carolina, where he did, plantation tours and shell tours. And I was in love with the Low Country. So I couldn't get enough of the tours. And so he took me under his wing and taught me everything he knew about the Low Country. And that's probably where I fell in love with the history, mystery, and romance of the Low Country. And Captain Sandy Vermont, as well as Captain Meade, was kind of a crusty fella. You never knew what was going to come out of his mouth. He was a little salty. And so both characters that character was completely Captain Sandy. Yeah. And he knew the book was dedicated to him. And he actually helped me write some of the scenes in it, like anything that involved an alligator or something like that would have been a Captain Sandy scene. Unfortunately, he died before the book actually was released, but he did know that the book was dedicated to him, and I was able to read the dedication to him, which meant a lot. But yeah, he's the whole reason. I think one of the reasons that I'm here in the Low Country and that I love this area so much is because of everything that I learned from him.
It's great to be able to have such a special person in your life and also in your book. And then you have some not so special people like Tony Russo.
Yeah.
He was special in a bad kind of way.
Yes.
I suppose in real life you had some Tony Rousseaus.
Well, never any as bad as Tony, but there's always those agents that you're going to cross paths with. When you do a 21 years career, you're going to cross paths with people that you don't agree with the way they do things, or they're just jerks. So I kind of pictured the worst agent that I had in mind, and I made him a lot worse for
Ooh.
Tony's character.
Well, you succeeded because he was quite the jerk. Did you have any Logans in your real life?
Logan, it's funny because Logan was the one person that in every book club that I've ever done, I get the most grief over Logan. The women especially, were in love with Logan, and they were so upset with what happened to Logan. And if you haven't read the book, I shouldn't give it away, but I made a lot of enemies because of what happened with Logan. But as far as my romantic, I was always careful because of the fact that, especially with these long-term cases, there was never any rule that I couldn't date while undercover. But if you think about it, say you were dating somebody and then real feelings developed, and 4 years later you come to that person and say, oh, guess what, I'm not really so and so, and my name's not really this, and I'm an FBI agent, and I don't really live here. I mean, that's kind of a big punch in the throat for trust. Mm-hmm. So with me, I always thought, I don't even want to try that. I don't want to go there. I'm not going to date in the undercover world. And I didn't. But now when I did come back to the office in between, I started dating an agent, and then got called back for the second undercover. And he and I ended up working together as a couple. So we were a romantically involved couple playing a couple. Which can be tricky.
And is that the one you ended up marrying?
That is my husband. So we figured after working together undercover for 3 solid years, that marriage would be a cakewalk after that experience. So yes, he's my husband now, so it has a happy ending.
I absolutely love that. I love that so much. And Shoshana, I love all those questions that you asked. It's a wonderful warm up to our book club meeting tonight. This is one part where I always have to ask the authors if they'd be willing to do it. Dan, are you going to read to us a little excerpt so we can hear your words reading your prologue or something like that you were going to share with us tonight?
Sure, I can read the prologue. I'm not the best at doing this, but I will give it a.
I really appreciate you doing it for us.
I do like the prologue of Beyond the Cabin, just because I don't know. I like to give people a little taste of what's to come, so to speak. Because when you start to jump in with the FBI stuff and preparing for a case, then people can zone out on you. So I thought, give them a little taste of what's to come and keep them hanging on. So this is the prologue to Beyond the Cabin. If I can get my glasses to work here. Briars tore at her flesh as she stumbled through the thick South Carolina swamp brush and harsh vegetation cutting into her exposed skin with every new step and movement. Sweat covered her body, stinging her eyes and open wounds, blurring her vision. Her breath came harsh and ragged, lungs ready to explode. Despite her weakened state, adrenaline and fear kept Lexi moving. She hoped she was moving in the right direction, having been unconscious when she was taken to the cabin. Lexi ran through the low-country swamps, trying to avoid the massive low-lying cypress stumps and fallen dead logs. Her visibility was no more than 20 feet because of the thick summer growth. A quick left turn put her on a dirt path. Which way? Which way? One way led to freedom and the other led back to her captor. Lexi chose a direction and pushed forward. The rutted path made running difficult, but slowing down was not an option. Every muscle in Lexi's body begged her to stop, but she ignored the pain. If she didn't make it back to her boat, the truth would never be known. Sweat burned Lexi's eyes and obscured her vision. She didn't see the hole in the ground. She heard a pop in her right ankle as it twisted, and she fell. The searing pain surged through her leg. She writhed in pain and briefly considered giving up, but she knew her captor would derive great pleasure from torturing her prior to killing her. Her heart pounded in her chest. She heard his footsteps quicken behind her, leaves and twigs crashing in the wake. A sudden, overwhelming feeling of dread came over her. Despite the nearly unbearable pain, Lexi pulled herself up and staggered forward. I've got to make it to the water. If I can get to the water, then I can find my boat. Lexi heard 3 popping sounds behind her, the unmistakable sound of gunfire. She felt an excruciating white-hot burning sensation in the back of her left arm. She knew she'd been hit. She bolted back into the wooded area for better cover. Her abductor followed her into the woods. She heard him cuss as he stumbled and fell, but he continued his pursuit, spraying several more rounds in her direction. Lexi heard the bullets whiz by her as she ran. She knew she couldn't slow down. Not only did she have to survive the gunman chasing her, but she had to find out where to find her hidden boat. Lexi had long given up on help from the FBI. No cavalry was coming to rescue her. She was on her own. As she stumbled through the thick vegetation, a branch caught her in the side of the face, nearly knocking her to the ground. She paused momentarily when she heard the lapping noise of water caressing the shore and realized that she had made it to the water's edge. Where did I leave the boat? She thought. Fuck, this all looks the same. I can't stay out here in the open for long. He'll find me. Lexi tried to wipe the sweat from her burning eyes, frantically looking for a familiar landmark. She looked left, then right. Blood poured from the wound on her arm, the pain causing her to stagger. She recognized an old dead cypress tree off in the distance, her refuge if the boat was tied to the tree. She knew she didn't have a minute to spare. She picked the most direct route to the cypress tree, and as she plodded through the marsh, she stopped to get her bearings. She felt a pull on her feet and legs, a strange sucking feeling. She began to sink. What the fuck? What is happening? Oh no, please no, this can't be happening. The harder Lexi struggled against the thick, sludgy pluff mud, the deeper she sank. Weak, bleeding, and up to her knees in unyielding pluff mud, she felt a large hand brutishly grab her shoulder. I guess this is where it ends.
Whew, got my heart pounding. The first time I read it and later on in the book.
Dana, it was exactly this passage that my book club had another question for you. After I read this. For you personally, did you go through any of these kinds of circumstances where you personally were injured?
I was injured on the job a few times, but not like this. I wasn't out in the woods running from gunfire. I was hurt, chasing a fugitive through the woods one time. I was hurt. I took a pretty bad fall and busted up my arm and had to continue pursuit. And I was actually drugged one time while undercover, and that was a pretty scary experience. So, so I was injured several times during, anytime you're in law enforcement, it can happen, but probably being drugged was the scariest thing that ever happened to me.
Yes.
Yeah. And that was no joke.
Yeah. Wow.
I can
imagine.
I bet.
But I guess I was shot at, but technically that was, when I was working marijuana eradication and there were rounds popping off all around me. So that's where some of that came from. I mean, I knew what it sounded like when bullets whizzed by your head.
Yeah. Glad it was you, not me. No, anyway, just kidding. That's an awesome story. I appreciate that. So at this point in time, we're going to have Dana introduce a surprise guest, and I'm going to go ahead and just bring Mr. Brown on screen. We're going to wave, and then Dana, you do the introduction right. So it would be great. Go for it.
Oh, well, I'm very happy to introduce my friend Mike Brown. And if you guys have not read any of his books, you're in for a treat. He's written a trilogy, the Shiloh trilogy, that were just wonderful books. And I loved them. He's a master at character development, and you just fall in love with his characters. And by the time I'd get finished with the first one, I was kind of hounding him for the second one and the third one. So I've read all of his trilogy, but now he has a new book out. And he sent it to me. Unfortunately, I haven't read it yet. It's next. It's next on my list, and I'm so excited to try it. But he's kind of ventured away from his Shiloh series, so I'm really I'm interested to know, one, why, because I love those characters. But Mike is just a wonderful author. He's a good Southern boy, and he writes Southern fiction so well, and that's what I love. I love Southern fiction, so he just nails it. He's so good at writing the Southern characters, writing the small town, the feel. You just want to live in this town when you finish the book. If you haven't read it, you're in for a treat. So, Mike, why did you switch? Why did you switch genres? Why historical fiction? Because I'd love for you to tell us about your fourth book.
Yeah, thank you. Well, first of all, it's your fault. Back in 2019, I was at the same conference you and I will be at this weekend, which is where I signed my first contract. Back in 2016, we did that. But anyway, when we left in 2019, I had done the 3, and Purgatory was coming out. And I was looking for a new venue to get my main characters in trouble in. And I had found researching Darien, Georgia. And I thought, that's cute. It's hard. It's a small town, second oldest city in Georgia. Let me stop in there. And, worst case scenario, I get some good shrimp and we'll go home. And when we arrived there, I ended up taking a tour of Sapelo Island while I was there. And when I came back off the island and I met the innkeeper at the Open Gates Bed and Breakfast, he handed me a history book. And within inside of a few hours of studying that book, I decided I had a story here that I had to be told. And I ventured away from my true pure Southern fiction to do Southern historical fiction. Matter of fact, I call it a historical novel because I think there is a slight difference. Even though this is there is some fiction, the storyline itself is fiction. But it's meant to display the characters who are real, experiencing real events, real places. Robert E. Lee shows up in this, General Lawton from the Georgia militia, the whole thing. So to give you the thumbnail on the story, The Last Lair to Sapelo comes out August 15th by Kohler Books. It's a story that is based upon a young man who died very early in the Civil War of pneumonia. He was the youngest son of Georgia, one of Georgia's most famous antebellum characters. His name was Thomas Spalding. He was considered the Thomas Jefferson of Georgia. He was that famous. And actually, they hobnobbed together in the early 1800s. But Randolph, at the breakout, his father dies in 1851, fighting to keep Georgia in the Union. A lot of us don't know that, but the Compromise of 1850 would have been secession of the South had it not been for Thomas Spalding swaying Georgia to stay in the Union. Thomas passes away, and then Randolph Spalding, the youngest of his 15 kids, of which only 5 survived to outlive their parents. Randolph attempts to do the same thing after hobnobbing and loving all the money and the fame he lived off of, but he fails to keep Georgia from seceding in 1861. And as a result, this prominent planter that was the last laird of Sapelo becomes a reluctant commander of a regiment who is sent to Sapelo Island to defend it when the Union blockade was sailing south. And in the midst of that, the main character here, he ultimately at the end of the story has to decide between what is the supposed justice versus saving the life of a slave who had exacted revenge for the murder and rape of 2 children on Sapelo Island. It's a story that I hope I'm not justifying the times as we look at it today, but I tried to bring us into the times of that time in the situations that they faced. And the only characters that I did not name literally were the slaves, the former Geechee on Sapelo. The only slave I did in the story is a man named Buala, who was the black overseer for Thomas Spalding, the second in command on Sapelo. It was one of the unique aspects of Thomas Spalding. And that's one of the other reasons I wanted to write this, because Randolph carried on that tradition when he was in charge of Sapelo Island. So anyway, it's a good story. I hope you enjoy it. It's history filled. I promise you that once you read this, you'll walk away with more questions than answers once you're done.
Ah,
It sounds intriguing.
And the reviews have been all great. That's all I can say.
okay,
That's
great.
great. Congratulations. So we'll need to feature you if we're going to read that book, right? That's the one you would like us to read and feature you this fall. Is that what?
Oh, I would love for you to do that.
Okay.
Really?
Right. We'll do. We're getting in the right timing with all this stuff these days. So, Mike, do you have a question for Dana tonight?
Yes, of course I do.
Uh-oh, I better run.
Can you give me a thumbnail of your next big intrigue? Because didn't you tell me that you were walking away from your undercover story?
I am for my fourth book, which is I'm in the last of the revisions, and I've been revising this book for longer than it took me to write the book. But yeah, I've walked away from the Lexi Montgomery stuff for a while and walked away from actually FBI books for a while. So this is a whole different genre for me. It's more literary fiction, kind of adventure as well. But it's basically the thumbnail on that one is a group of friends. They grew up together. So they went to high school and everything, but they're in their 50s now. They get together after a tragedy. And one of the characters feels the need to hike the Appalachian Trail. She just she needs to find herself. She needs to get back to find who she is. And so they decide they can't let her do this by herself. It's too dangerous. So these four old friends get on the Appalachian Trail together. And what they realized was just because you're a childhood friend doesn't mean that you know all the secrets that you've accumulated as adults. So they go for her, but they end up all shedding a lot of baggage throughout the trip. And it has some funny parts and it has some scary parts and it has a lot of kind of gut punches as well. But, you know, by the time you get to your 50s, you've gone through a lot of betrayal, love, loss, a little bit of everything. So that's kind of what they're dealing with, in addition to nature, bears, and other things.
Well, you know, Dana, I've read all of your stuff. Connie has as well. You know, and to see this departure, it's going to be a fun journey for us to go with you on that story. We look forward to it. And if you want to, to do some more research on the Appalachian Trail, let me know. I'll bring this 70-year-old body back out and we'll try to walk the trail.
Yeah. Well, I tried to, when I first started working on the book, I asked my husband, I said, hey, how would you think about, would you like to through hike the Appalachian Trail? He just looked at me like, he was looking at an alien. He was like, 2,190 miles? No way. He said, if you have any friends stupid enough to do it, I'll support you. But I am not going out on the Appalachian Trail and sleeping on the ground for 6 months of my life.
Have him watch Robert Redford's The Walk.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great book. I love that book too.
Yeah.
That's a great book.
There you go. Awesome.
But yeah, so but I'll take you up on the hiking. I love to hike, and I've hiked parts of the Appalachian Trail, but I've never through hiked the whole thing. Obviously, I'm not sure if I could. I'd be game to try it, but that's a lot of miles.
It's a shorter walk to come down here to Noonan than it is to do the 1,200 miles of it. So when your new book comes out, you have a golden ticket to come visit us and participate here in Noonan in a couple of author events for sure.
I'll take you up on that. That sounds wonderful. Sounds wonderful.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it was a difficult transition though. I wasn't expecting that. I thought, it'd just be, okay, I'm just going to write a different kind of book. And it was a completely different experience. And having to write more of a literary book, you're delving more into the characters, and it's not plot based. It's more character driven. So it's all, well, as my editor says, deeper, deeper, deeper. So.
Dana, the secret of good stories is characters. Yeah. The plots are hard to change a whole lot, but if you write really good characters and descriptions that way, the rest of the story just takes care of itself. The characters will take you on the plot,
Well, they did. We went on a trip together.
Very good.
That's awesome.
Looking forward to seeing you this weekend.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Y'all have fun at that, and say hi to Cassandra. We featured an author, I think in 2020, and she had done the trail in Washington solo, and she's actually created quite a following from her book. And so it's not as crazy as Wild, but it was her own journey, and she's still out there walking. So she's probably a good person to find, Dana, if you do decide you want to keep on doing the whole distance. She could do it probably.
Yeah.
So normally I like to do a little, like a question from the comments. And I want to say hello to Donette Lee, who's joined us tonight, and Terry and Pamela. And I've been trying to get Michael Lucker on here because I saw those messages, but I'm not sure if he made it over, but we definitely will have the replay for him to see. Shoshana, do you have a question for Dana or Mike?
I do, for Dana again. I'm going to read you back a couple of comments that you made in the book. One of them was, undercover agents build relationships to betray relationships. And I thought, particularly when you were undercover for deep cover and for as long as you were, how difficult that must be. And then the other one was, with each undercover assignment that you work, you will lose a small part of yourself. So with those two comments, and in writing these 3 books, did you learn anything about yourself in these 3 books?
Well, I learned that I wrote the first book for therapy, for sure. Definitely, I didn't realize it when I was writing the book, but it was very therapeutic with stuff I was pouring out on the page. And my first, of course, draft was a lot rougher and a lot more, I don't know, not as many silver linings, I guess. And the editor kind of went through basically and said, woof, some of this is harsh. So, yeah, so we toned some of it down, but it was very therapeutic. But I'm pretty convinced, though, when you're working long-term undercover, there's no way you come out the other end the same as when you start, especially after that many years. And when I came out after working almost 7 years, it was, I mean, I'm not going to say that I wasn't broken, because I was. I mean, I went back to work and I still felt like an anarchist. I still felt like a criminal. I had a badge and a gun, but my attitude was still as an undercover back, running around with the activist. And it was my supervisor at the time was the one that kind of drew it out and said, "Hey, you're acting like a criminal." And he pulled me into his office one day and he had my personnel file. And he was like, "The person in this personnel file and the person sitting across from me are not the same person. So you need to go find the person that's in the personnel file." And I don't know how you're going to do that. And usually the FBI is really good about doing a safeguard assessment where after we've done long-term undercover work, we go through therapy and, just talking to counselors and testing, make sure you're not off the rails. But because our case ended abruptly because of an emergency transfer, that we fell through the cracks, and that was it. We just sort of hit the streets again. So we didn't go through all of that stuff. And I think that made a big difference because, there was never any transition from, being a bad guy to being an agent again. So, yeah, I lost a lot of myself, I think, in those 7 years.
Wow. That would certainly be a major, major thing in terms of transitioning back.
It is. And, undercover work's not for everyone. It's really not. It's a lonely process. I was lucky enough to work the second part of it, with Bill. So I did have a partner. But the first 4 years, I was completely by myself. I didn't have anybody to bounce anything off of. I didn't have a partner. I didn't have anybody to come home to at the end of the day and, just kind of laugh about, things that we saw or did. So it's really easy to start slipping down that slippery slope, when you're alone. And undercover work is a lot of alone time.
I'm glad that you gave Lexi Savannah Riley.
Yeah.
Book.
Well, Savannah was based on a real person, but it didn't end well with the real person. The real person was very angry, and she was part of the reason why there was an emergency transfer. But Yeah, and I didn't want that for Lexi. I wanted Lexi to be able to have like a win, I guess, in that situation. So and also I liked Savannah. I wanted her to be able
Mhm.
to come out the other end changed, but whole again too.
Mhm. And she did. She was.
Yes, but she
And
was
it,
a changed person. I mean, she grew
Mhm.
up, I guess, basically.
Mhm. She did. So
Fantastic.
a question, do I still have time for one more?
Yeah, we real quick. I do want to ask Mike some things and have them interact. We've only got about 5 more minutes.
So the question for both of you is one that Susie has been asking, and that is, who are you currently reading? So Mike, who are you currently reading?
Charles Frazier. I'm reading his book, Verena. It was one of my comparables. And I said, if you're going to have a comparable, book, when I was being asked that question, I said, it's probably a good idea to read it too. But I love Charles Frazier, and I love his descriptions in the story of Verena, who is Jefferson Davis's wife. And the story is talking about after the war, what happened to her and her family. And so I'm enjoying that.
That's
Awesome.
interesting. Okay, and Dana.
Well, I've got about 3 books right now. Right now, I'm the Pat Conroy Literary Center has been going back through and doing all of Pat's books again. So I'm actually in the middle of The Great Santini because it's been years since I read The Great Santini, and that's our next book for discussion. And then Polly Stewart is going to be at we're hosting her at the Beaufort Bookstore, I think, but it's Pat Conroy at the end, and I'm going to interview her at the end of June.
Nice.
So I've got Polly Stewart's book ready to go, and I've got Mike's book. So I've got 3 great authors sitting on my desk right now, ready to read. And
You just put my name in the same paragraph with Pat Conroy.
I just did. See, look at this. See, well, you might have to buy me dinner for that, right?
Yeah, at
That's
least
pretty,
Yeah.
that's
So
pretty
I've got
special
kind of
there.
a hodgepodge of authors all going on at the same time.
So can y'all tell us a little bit more about, I remember when you went last year, tell us a little bit, Mike can say some, and Dana, about the event you're doing this weekend in St. Simon's.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll just give you my side of it because Dana can give you the inside of it. But the Southeastern Writers Association has been very dear to my heart. It's at the Epworth Center, which is a very, very, gosh, how do I say this? Not enclosed, but it's a very small, convenient venue that's more of a campus. There's a lot of church people that go there. Camps are going on with youngsters at the site. But and then I guess it makes us all feel a lot younger too. But we have workshops that go from Saturday morning until Monday night, Tuesday morning. Awards are given out for different books. Guest speakers like Cassandra is there, and met some wonderful people. Like I said, my original book Sanctuary got its first contract signed there back in 2016, and Dana has been my best friend since then. Her and Jedwin Smith have actually helped encourage me along my way.
Well, it's a wonderful organization. I'm the vice president this year, well, until Tuesday, and then Tuesday I'm stepping off the board to give somebody else a chance. But so the vice president's job is to get the faculty. So I'm just thrilled to death. This year we have Cassandra King, who's our keynote, but she's also a wonderful teacher. Cassandra taught college level, and so she's just a great teacher. She's going to be there teaching. We have a children's book author. We have a publisher that's going to be there. It's a very small organization, but this is our 49th year. So next year is going to be the big 5-0, and hopefully they'll have a big celebration for it. But it's just it's more of a family,
Yeah.
I think, than just a writers conference. You can go to writers conferences and there'll be 700 people. You don't get a real chance to know hardly anybody in that situation. But if you go to Southeastern Writers at Epworth, it's all inclusive. You're eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner together.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing the nighttime stuff, the open mic, the keynote. We're having cupcakes party. We're having live music this year because our Michael Lister is our thriller writer and teacher, and he's also a musician. So he's agreed to live music every night. So where else can you go and get live?
Are you going to bring your guitar?
I'm not bringing mine because I'd be embarrassed. Those two, he and one of our board members, Jeff Newberry, is a fantastic guitar player, and I would look like such an amateur up there with those two guys. So I am not bringing my guitar.
It's an organization that
Oh,
throughout the year you get to communicate with and get to know all of these people throughout the year. So it's not just go to the conference once a year and then wait till next year. You're communicating with these people. I've gotten to know many of them and have enjoyed it.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, I wish you both the best of luck, and I love the sound of that community. I remember talking to you about it last year, Dana. One of the things, just at this point, because we've had such a good time, we need to wrap up, and I just want everybody to say a closing comment. I want to thank you all for joining me, and I look forward to seeing Shoshana again in Beaufort, maybe in the fall, when we're going to do our Low Country Literary and Leisure Getaway in conjunction with the Pat Conroy Literary Festival. So I'll talk more about that later, but too many people were like, let's go again. So I said, well, let's do a little bit of stuff, and then you guys go to all the festival stuff. So anyway, but if Shoshana, you'd like to do some closing comments, and then Mike and Dana, you'll have the last word, and we'll log off. Thank you both for being here tonight. And Shoshana, thanks for helping.
Sure. It was my pleasure to do that, particularly after having the privilege of meeting you, Dana, last year and reading your books. So this was a lot of fun. Thank you for letting me do it. And Mike, it was good to meet you. I'll be reading your books too shortly.
Well, I'll be honored with that y'all will do that. The book is available by pre-order now, so I do encourage that. A little plug for Kohler Books. Amazon, bookshop.org, Barnes & Noble, all are on pre-order right now. August 15th is when it does come out officially. I'm kind of getting a little antsy waiting for that, the bandwagon's rolling. Thank you, Dana.
Oh, well, and I encourage everybody to come to the Low Country Literary Getaway. It's so much fun. I've been a part of it for 2 years now, and the Pat Conroy Literary Festival is just wonderful. I'm also a volunteer, a docent there. So last year we had huge crowd, and we show the movie on Friday night and have popcorn, and it's just so much fun. So I'm so glad that you're doing it in conjunction with the literary festival. That's just going to be like a double bang. So,
Right.
Yeah. So come visit us in Beaufort. So all you people that don't live here, come visit us in Beaufort.
Right.
It's a great idea.
Very good.
Right. So we got to get it planned. But everyone have a wonderful evening. I see the sun kind of going behind a cloud here, and let's all hope that the weather conditions shift. So goodness, everything up in New York, it doesn't come all the way down here. I feel so bad for the current weather dynamic. And of course, the horrible fires. But with that, everybody keep reading. Have a wonderful evening. I'm going to sign off. Thanks again for joining us, everybody. Thanks, Shoshana, Mike, and Dana. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Y'all have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.